Okay, in Islam, you have major sins and you have minor sins. Some of the things that make a minor sin major is when you seem to take pleasure in having committed that minor sin. There are sins that really you should not talk about as though you're proud of committing those sins. And that's why I hesitated to make this particular video. But I am making this video in order to give an example of what boxing really is when you talk about jail boxing. To give you the background, for about close to a year, I was waiting for a friend of mine to turn himself in for a crime he committed. We looked the same on a camera. I was picked up, and I knew that he would turn himself in eventually, so I waited. But during that time, I had to find a way to make the most of my situation. In this particular place, they had a up gym and they had a down gym. The first time they called up gym, I did not go. I did not leave the cell and go. The first time they called down gym, I did not leave the cell and go. But there was someone who I felt like I could ask. And I asked this one brother, what is the up gym? And he said, it's the weight room. And I asked him, what is the down gym? And he said, that's the boxing ring, the boxing area. So I didn't know how long I was going to be in that particular institution, but I did know that I really could not make much of a statement going to the weight room. Even though I had lifted weights, everybody's lifting weights. Everybody's going up and lifting weights. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't really make you all that tough to lift weights. I mean, there are people who think that when they're outside, but inside, lifting weights is not that big of a deal. I decided to go to the down gym. To the boxing gym. So when I get down there, I hit the bag, I'm hitting the bag, and then someone asked me to move around, which meant to spar. Well, we went three rounds. I think it was 3 rounds, okay? Got heated. He was obviously trying to take my head off, or maybe not so obviously, but he was trying to take my head off. And because he was a lot taller than I was, he was about 6'1", and about 210, solid muscle, he thought he would take my head off. Needless to say, he asked me after the sparring session, would I work with him to help him with his boxing? I am using that as a segue into the difference between jail boxing, real jail boxing, and boxing in the ring or boxing out in the street, because nobody really tells you that. I'm going to tell you. And this is the kind of boxing that maybe that Bernard Hopkins did. This is the kind of boxing that Dwight Muhammad Qawi did. This is the kind of boxing that James Scott did. So you can look up James Scott, Rawway Prison. Most of you have never heard of him. You can look up Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Most of you have never heard of him. Of course, you've heard of Bernard Hopkins. In jail or prison boxing, okay, there are several things that goes on there. One, the person on the opposite side of the ring is usually trying to knock you out. Why? Why? Because if there is one place that you want to get around, that you knock somebody out, it's in jail or in prison. Okay? That's where you want to knock people out at. And that's where you want people to see you knock someone out and that's where you want people to hear that you knock somebody out. It is no place where it is more valuable to have the reputation of knocking out people than if you are incarcerated. So here, in there, people are trying to knock you out. But there's something else. If you were going in there, the pity pat, in the ring, to pity pat, you're in trouble. Because again, if you cannot hurt someone who is trying to knock you out, it is going to be a long night. A long night. And the odds of you, and the odds in favor of you will drop. Will drop. But guess what? You cannot go in there only trying to knock that person out either. And I'll tell you why. Because if you get tired, you need to understand something. If you get tired, you've lost. And if there's one place where you don't want people to know that you have lost or you've given up, it's being in jail or in prison. In addition to that, when someone asks you to go 3 rounds, you better finish those 3 rounds. It is like a bet. You said you would go 3 rounds. By golly, you were going to go that 3 rounds. Even if you're getting your clock cleaned the last minute or so of the 3rd round, or the 2nd round, or the 1st round. Once you say you're going those rounds, you are going to go those rounds. There is nothing like when you are boxing in jail or you're boxing in prison. Nothing like it. Most of the people that you see, most of the people you see in the street, and you say, oh, they got good defenses, great defenses, right? They're doing this and it's jail boxing. That's not jail boxing. Most of what you people are told is jail boxing. It's not jail boxing. And most of you people, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Most of those people don't get in the ring. The people who say that their style of boxing comes from jail, or comes from prison, they don't get in the ring. Most of them have never gotten in the ring. They wouldn't survive in the ring. You know why? Because they're so bent on their defense. Defense, right? They're bent on the defense. If you hear anyone tell you they boxed in prison or boxed in jail and they're talking about their defense is so good that that's how they were able to box, I'm telling you, they are a liar. They are a liar. Because when you are incarcerated, you better be able to punch. And your defense is slipping and blocking. You better know how to box or you do not get in the ring. Because if you cannot really box, and I mean have a good defense, and I mean being able to slip, if you don't know how to put your hands up and put your chin down, if you don't know how to ride a punch on top of your cranium, if you don't know how to just kind of move away and ride with a shot, if you don't know how to do it, you will not survive. You will not survive. So some people might ask, well, why did you go to the down gym? Because I didn't know how long it was going to take for my friend to turn himself in. But I did know that my life would be better if I could prove myself in the gym. Why? I'm 5'7", 185 pounds. I was in no way the biggest man in that particular area. I was no way the biggest man in that place. But respect goes a long way amongst men. It goes a long way amongst men, and particularly someone 5'7", 185 pounds, okay, who moves that way against people who are 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds, solid muscle, trying to take his head off. It's an experience. Now, did I know I would survive? I didn't know I would survive. But I had been boxing for a long time. I knew I could take a punch. And I've always been able to make the most of a situation instantly. And sitting around or going to the top gym and lifting weights, there's a whole lot of 5'7", muscle-bound weightlifters in jail and in prison who have been victims. Nothing like getting respect with your fists. Now, did that mean that I was the toughest guy where I was? No, not at all. But as I've said before, the fact that I went to the down gym, and were there a lot of people there? No. Believe it or not, there were only about 5 people there. In the boxing gym, in a boxing area, only about 5 people, fully equipped. headgear, groin guards, right? Punching bags, multiple pairs of boxing gloves, a relatively nice ring. But just like in the street, people generally who are in jail or are in prison, most people who are heavy, the big guys, the last thing they want to deal with is another big guy. The last thing a heavyweight wants to deal with in the jail or in prison is another heavyweight, unless they're die-hard gang members. You know, gang members are just, if they're die-hard gang members, serious, serious gangsters, your size doesn't matter. They gonna do you whatever. They gonna try you whatever, right? But the average person who walks in off the street in jail or in prison, right, who is a big dude, 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds, the last thing they want to run into is somebody 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. Just like outside. Just like outside. Some of the softest people you ever want to meet, right, are heavyweights, are big dudes, a lot of muscles, right? Again, unless that's their thing. Unless they are fighters. Like I know some fighters who are heavyweight fighters. They'll fight anybody, right? They'll fight anybody, right? Or people who are bouncers. Well, they know they're going to run into people who are big and they don't really have a problem with it, right? Or people who are correction officers. Well, they know they're going to run into people who are big. But the average person, I would say 90% of the people you see in the street who are heavyweights don't want to deal with another heavyweight. It's the same way in jail or in prison. But respect goes a long way. And it certainly, as I've said, goes a long way when somebody 5'7", 180 pounds asks for no mercy, right? And asks for no concessions and gets in the ring with people who just ask him to spar. And it's a totally different game. It's a totally different game. So you young black guys who are told that jail boxing and prison boxing and, when they were taught in prison, they would not get into the ring in prison or in jail and survive. Why? Because defense does not win fights. Offense wins fights. See you next video.